This is Kevin Pruitt. I'm with my good friend Mike McRitchie. Mike, thanks for joining Rising Tide Recap after 6 months after your initial interview. It's good to have you.
Great to be here, Kevin.
So tell us, just remind our audience, just give us a real short bio who Mike McRitchie is.
Yeah, well, I help professionals and techies get their LinkedIn profiles, resumes up to date and working for them, and also help them with their job search process. What I found is a lot of people get to the middle of their career and they've kind of progressed almost on autopilot through their career, and now they get to a point where they have to really think about what they want to do next, and often their resources and the approach they took throughout their career doesn't work for them as well. And so then they come to me and we talk about what they're really good at and talk about some of their cool stories and how they make things happen in this kind of new LinkedIn driven job search world.
You know, so many times our side business or our side gig are almost born out of necessity. Is that your experience? Was this as a result of you having a job change, or you wanted to change jobs or transition or whatever? How did you because you were in the kind of the telecom
Correct.
space, or maybe still are for a number of years. So
I've been in the telecom business for over 20 years and in and out of jobs, whether as a contractor or as an employee. I've hired and fired and been on both sides of that. And what I found was you really had to be prepared for change. And whether that was companies going out of business or the business model changing or the economy tanks, all those things have a big impact on you. And if you're not prepared, you find yourself out of options at that point. And you spend a lot of time trying to figure it out. And you can jump on the web and try and get some tips and tricks to do things. But how do you know which ones are going to work for you that are tailored to your situation? And too often people just don't figure that out quickly. And so then they're out of work for 3, 4, 5 months. And then that turns into people looking at them and going, well, why are they out of work? Maybe there's something wrong with them. So you really want to be able to make something happen quickly when the change does happen, or if you want to choose to make a change, to be prepared. And so that's where I come in.
So how long have you been doing this kind of LinkedIn consultation, resume, CV consultation type thing?
Overall, going on, I think 3 years now. I started off with a blog and was kind of focused on the business end of things, and then converted it over to resume writing initially, as I found most of my LinkedIn connections were employees, not business owners. So we kind of went in that direction more out of just kind of recognizing the opportunity, and that I'd helped people with their resumes over the years, just, as a friend, and found that I was good at that and just really enjoyed it. And so I delved into it. I learned, I took courses, I, looked at the best of the best of how they do it. People who charge, $3,000 to $8,000 for resume and LinkedIn rewrites. And, I figured, no, I'm not going to charge that amount, because a lot of the people I deal with aren't going to be able to afford that, but still kind of pick the best tools of the trade and go through that for them, so they don't have to figure it out, or pay for $2,000 and $3,000 courses to figure it all out themselves. So just basically a curator of good job search approaches and how to tailor that, and then rewrite the copy, whether it's the resume or the LinkedIn profile or a cover letter, to help them through that process.
So would you say this was kind of born out of, you almost stumbled on this? I mean, if friends kept asking you about it, and you kept thinking, hey, I'm seeing a pattern here. People ask me how to do this, and so maybe I need to start monetizing this or something. Is that kind of the process? Or?
Well, I kind of wanted to start a business consulting venture, and I realized that as I was starting down that path, it was going to be a challenge to do that on a part-time basis from a startup when I hadn't had any experience doing that. So I figured part of learning to be an entrepreneur is being an entrepreneur and just jumping into something that you do have an alignment of your skill set and interests. And that was something I just enjoyed, helping people, particularly in the business world. And so careers kind of fit into that arena. And having found I was helpful in those areas, I decided this is something to test out and see if it actually works. And early on, I did a offer out to LinkedIn and just a post on my LinkedIn site, and found that I had people interested in getting their resumes evaluated. And that then turned into paid resume rewrites with people. And it just kind of snowballed from there.
So over the last 6 months since we talked, what would you say has been maybe the highest high that you've experienced in that last, I mean, it may have been closer to 7 months, but when we had our year, I think you were interview number 7. So you were early days. You were back when I couldn't even spell podcasts. So,
well, yeah, I think there's been a couple of areas. One, on my blog, I had a company approach me to have blog posts written for my blog that align with my audience and how that how the blog really looks in terms of focus on career and business concepts and ideas and tips and things like that. And so they came to me to pay me to put some of these posts on there, and that turned into a real good side gig spinoff. Several $1,000s a month out of that opportunity, and something that I wasn't even anticipating. So something that just by having a blog that had evolved over 3 years, it became an opportunity there. And then secondarily, I decided it was time to raise my prices a little bit, partly because I only had so much time available and I wanted to focus on the people that I could impact the most. And so part of that was focusing on people that are kind of higher tier career professionals. Maybe they're making 100K or more and are really trying to figure things out, or there's somebody who's just really motivated that I connect with and they want to make something happen, and they recognize that spending several $100s to even up to $1,000, like I had one last week for $1,000, would generate another $10,000 to $20,000 a year, and really move that timeline up so they could start making the higher salaries in a month or two, or if they're out of work, every month they're out of work, they're losing out on $8,000 to $10,000. So really recognizing that there were people out there who saw the benefit and wanting to work with those. So I adjusted some of my pricing packages to fit that. Different levels still, but it fit more of my time, really earning the money that was aligned with the time I was putting in. And certainly when you're taking away time from kids and family, it has to make sense.
Well, I mean, that's really interesting that you touched on those things. I mean, I literally had another interview earlier today with a lady that is helping people create courses, in their businesses. And as we were talking, we were just looking at, I mean, it's all relative. So depending on the price, if people see value and you can increase their revenue more than the price, it is, it's always a gain.
Yep.
Absolutely. So how do they don't mind paying the price if the outcome is going to be higher than what they started with. So,
right. I think for me, that really where I started really changing the focus a little bit, because initially I was so focused on the product being a resume or a LinkedIn profile that there are people who will produce those at a lower cost to somebody. But what I was really selling wasn't the LinkedIn profile or the resume. It was uncovering the accomplishments and cool stories that they have that go with their career. A lot of times they're not seen. And so if somebody doesn't know or recognize how to pull that information out of their heads, they're missing out on that. And so their resume or LinkedIn profile really won't reflect their best stuff.
Right.
And so that was a big part of it. And then also recognizing that their goal is to get a promotion or a better job or land a job if they're out of work right now, and every day counts, and they don't have the time to figure it out for themselves, or maybe that's not their expertise. Maybe they're not good writers. Maybe they struggle with trying to figure themselves out. They can figure other people out easier. I think we all have that problem. So really it's more about giving them that guidance and then helping them along the way. That I've had people email me after, hey, I got this opportunity. Can you just tell me if I'm on the right track? I take a peek at it for 5 minutes and go, yeah, you might want to check out this or this. maybe tweak this element of your resume or your cover letter, and here's what I'd suggest. A lot of that stuff I just do for free to help out people after the fact. So I find that that's really useful.
I think that those people, though, if you provide value on the front end, I think that when they need a little more detailed service, they'll remember who helped them the first time.
Exactly. And I think also by providing a higher value and a higher price service, I'm more willing to invest in them as
Right.
well. And if I'm willing to invest in them, I'm not feeling like, oh shoot, I've already burned through my hourly rate and now I'm working for free.
Yeah.
In this arena, because there's enough dollars there and enough value, I have no problem really being their guide in the process, no matter what that takes. And I think they see that and they get more value out of it. And because they get more value out of it, they'll refer other people to me.
Exactly.
I'll have more good quality clients to work with who really do want to make a difference and are willing to put in the effort.
Well, part of the reasoning behind wanting to circle back with our interview guests is just to see how the feedback has played into the listener-based feedback has played into their business. And let me remind you the 2 pain points that you mentioned 6 months ago. One was just balancing time. Just how do you balance time and trying to get your kind of the side gig going? And the other one was really building your email list, as kind of a base or a foundation. So tell me in specific or more generic terms, I mean, how have those been, have you overcome them or are you in the process of overcoming those obstacles? And was there any feedback that was provided that was particularly helpful?
Well, I think, on the time side of it, we talked a little bit, I think, about, virtual assistant or things like that. And possibly also about the pricing side. So, number one, I looked at the pricing and said, how can I get it into the right arena for me that provides more value there? And so I reevaluated some of the packages that I was pricing things on. I was doing a lot of different things with a lot of different prices, and it was somewhat confusing. So I got it down to 3 basic packages based on where they're at in their journey and what they want out of the process. And I think that helped a lot. I got different opportunities with clients based on that were different than before, where they were more focused on the overall process of landing that next job rather than just kicking out a resume. And I've had a few referrals of people through people I've met and connected with where they've referred people. In some cases, they haven't been what they wanted. They wanted something that was a cheaper, cleaner, quick version because they were just trying to get a resume out there. And they didn't have a need for the rest. And that was fine. And, they'll move to where they find that right fit. So I think that was a useful exercise, just kind of recognizing that I needed to value my time and then align my offering with how I approached that so that all of that aligned.
I think that was one of the I mean, I'm really taxing my memory here because I haven't looked at the feedback sheet again, but it seems like to me that one of the points was very much aligned to that about valuing your time. Instead it's so like the, working, how do you work on your business instead of in it type thing, the whole adage about how do you just don't trade your time for dollars type thing. Right. So provide a service that is, you alluded to it a little bit, this idea of how can I guide people through this process without feeling like I'm working as an hourly employee for them, so that's good.
Yeah. And then another thing I worked on was for this other posting on my blog side hustle, how I could do that to where if I went on vacation, I could still have it happening in the background. So I had read Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek recently after thinking, God, I haven't read this ever, and everybody's talked about it. So let's see what this thing's about. And one of the things that was interesting in that book was around really automating a lot of your daily stuff and organizing it so that you're doing it deliberatively instead of in reaction and firefighting and things like that. And so I just basically went through the process I go through to take a post from what they send me to get it loaded up on my site and responded. And, I just basically did it as I went. real time, and then put it up in a Google Doc so that in the event that I need to do that, I can send that to a virtual assistant to do that on my behalf.
Well, that's it's interesting how just the transitions you've gone through just in the last 6 months, and I mean, you and I connect, fairly frequently offline, and I just want to give you some props here as the host of Rising Tide Startups. I mean, listening audience, Mike is one of the most faithful members we have in the whole Rising Tide community. He is a gold level 5-star. Gives feedback, virtually weekly, and I mean, has not just feedback. It's not just lip service, but it really is well thought out feedback based on the pain points that the listeners provide each week. And there's a small handful of people that are so very faithful weekly, to do that. And Mike, I just want to publicly just thank you for your efforts and just helping, like we say every week, helping all boats rise in a rising tide, because you've sacrificially given effort and spoken into the community, and even spoken into the things that I've done, to help me, do this better, and to kind of build a business around the podcast itself. But listeners, I want to encourage you to, use Mike as a resource. If you, anything related to LinkedIn, resumes, job coaching, that type of thing, I mean, just touch base with him. In our Facebook group, touch base with him. Just, he's on Facebook online, and I mean, he certainly is a valuable resource. We've just transitioned recently to try to provide some services through Rising Tide, and one of those is that kind of a LinkedIn based service, and Mike is certainly the backbone of that. And so we're kind of collaborating and trying to work out what that looks like moving forward. But just want to make sure that it's a service that our listeners know about and will utilize. And Mike, let's wrap up today. Just tell me something that you want to add to this that we haven't touched on, and tell people how they can find you online type thing. So close us out here.
Well, I think, first of all, thank you for that. I think you, through this podcast and beginning in your Facebook community, are really showing that there's more to building a business or having a business community than just everybody doing their own thing. And it's really fun to be able to collaborate with people, and I think this audience is really going to build and do some things for you and for each other as a result. And so definitely the more you give or raise a question, there's people out there who are willing to help out. A lot of those questions can be answered at no cost to you, so it's just a matter of taking the risk of putting it out there into the internet world and seeing what people say. In terms of getting a hold of me, you can reach me by my website at mikemcritchie.com, and email, you can get me through that at mike@mikemcritchie.com. That's MICKE at MIKEMCRITCHIE.com. But yeah, if you search for Mike McRitchie, I'm pretty much the only one that pops up on page one, other than I think some guy who's a fisherman in Canada.
And you're just a fisherman in Northern California, so
exactly. So it's all good.
Well, Mike, it's been great just touching base with you and kind of circling back after 6 months or so, and just hearing your story. And I know, I have followed it offline, and I know that you have, taken some great strides in the last 6 months, and it's just a good lesson for all of us about, how things can be achieved, even in a side hustle type thing, while you're faithful to your day job type thing. So I really appreciate you just coming on the show, and just appreciate your friendship, and just want to once again just give you some props for just helping all boats rise in a rising tide. Mike, have a great weekend.
Thank you very much, Kevin.